In today's video, we'll be talking all about breakthroughs, what they are, how to get them, and what they mean for your training. I'm Scott Steele,
And I'm Armando Mastracci.
and this is Xert Breakthrough Tech Support. Okay, here's an interesting question. How do I get a breakthrough? Do I really have to go all out? And the answer is, of course. Xert is aiming to model your maximum performance, so in order for it to do that effectively, it needs to see you push yourself to the limits. If it's been a while since your last breakthrough, or maybe your fitness signature is underestimated, it's going to feel a bit easier to achieve a breakthrough. But once you've got an accurate fitness signature in Xert, it's going to take absolutely everything you have to push and get a breakthrough. You're not going to get a breakthrough on any submaximal efforts. Now, in terms of how to actually get a breakthrough, there's basically two ways to do it. The first is to push above your MPA with a short, hard effort. So let's say you're riding along, you see your MPA is 650 watts. So you stand up and you sprint and you aim for 700 or 750 watts. You give it everything you have. The other way to achieve a breakthrough is to pull your MPA down to your power output. And this is going to require often a longer, steadier effort, such as a time trial or maybe a sustained climb, or even a 20-minute FTP test would be an example of this, where let's say you hold 350 watts and you watch your MPA start at 11 or 1200 and it comes down to 1000, down to 800, and you keep holding that effort steady all the way until MPA comes to 350 watts. And you keep holding that effort until you can't. So to recap, yes, you have to push hard, you have to really earn those breakthroughs, and to achieve a breakthrough, you need to push above your MPA or pull MPA down to your power output.
Let's see, what does a breakthrough feel like? I don't know. You tell me. I think for everyone, that's a very subjective question. Everyone's going to feel them a little bit differently. Some people find them easy to get. Some people find them really hard. I think in some ways, though, it really depends on the type of breakthrough. So if you're, let's say, sprinting to increase your peak power, those may not be too difficult. They may not feel hard. They may be hard to actually achieve. You might be, trying to actually get and increase your sprinting power. It may not create a lot of discomfort. However, as your MPA comes down, you'll find that it becomes harder and harder. So, and the discomfort increases as your MPA comes down. So your MPA may start at whatever, 1100, 1000 watts or what have you, and it starts to come down, and it comes down to 600 watts. You're feeling it. It's starting to feel, well, you're starting to feel a lot of discomfort, and your body's they're gonna want to not continue. You're just like, I don't want to keep going. But if you're in a group ride, if you're in a race, your adrenaline's gonna be kicking in. You just want to keep going. You want to keep up. You don't want to get dropped. And so in those cases, you may feel the discomfort, but that gets overridden just by your desire to just want to keep going. So just realize that if your MPA is 600, it may feel like you have no power left, but you do have some power left. You can't sprint, but you can keep going, and to keep going is going to feel a little bit of discomfort. So to answer that question, not all breakthroughs really have to be that hard, but in most cases, if it didn't feel really hard, then it most likely wasn't a breakthrough.
Ooh, I think this is a great question. Do I have to do breakthroughs all the time to keep my signature accurate? Yes, this question comes up quite a bit among Xert users, people that have tried Xert, or maybe people that are on the fence about trying Xert. And the answer is a resounding no. You don't have to be doing breakthroughs week after week to have an accurate signature or to use Xert. In your profile, Xert will show you your last breakthrough activity. It'll link you to it. And if it's been more than 3 weeks since that activity, you'll get a little pop-up notification saying that your signature is stale. But this is just a friendly nudge to include some harder efforts and maybe try for a breakthrough. It's not really a reason for panic. Now, behind the scenes, Xert uses something called signature decay to track changes in your fitness over longer periods of time. You can tweak this setting by going to Profile Settings, Fitness Signatures, Signature Decay. Optimal decay, which is the default setting, allows your signature to sit a little below where we would expect it to be based on your training after a few weeks, making it a bit easier for you to achieve a breakthrough and reset your signature. Now, if you want fewer max efforts, try switching to slow or no decay. These options will track your fitness signature more directly with their training loads, meaning that if you're training consistently, if your training load is going up, you can expect to see your fitness signature going up even without breakthroughs. So, personally, for myself, I use the slow decay setting, have used it for a while. I find it's a good balance of allowing me to go out and push for a breakthrough when I really want to, but also doing a good job of keeping my signature accurate and giving me a signature that I can train with during periods where I'm not doing breakthroughs all the time. So, to recap, you don't need to go full beast mode week after week to be using Xert. You don't have to be getting breakthroughs every week to use Xert. The signature decay settings allow you to pick something that suits your needs and your training goals.
My FTP went down after my ride. What happened? Well, we get this question often from our users. And usually what happens is they may have gone out for a ride and they'll come back and either their FTP or their parts of their fitness signature have come down. You'll see these as open circles on your progression chart. You may have received a near breakthrough report on Strava, and this is a reflection of what's happened on that ride. So this is a really important distinction in terms of what's happening to your fitness. It tracks your changes to your fitness, all right? But it's doing so by examining individual rides. So a near breakthrough is usually a reflection that you're able to get really close to your limit, but not quite there, right? So you stopped a bit short of getting that full breakthrough. And that's often because just of the nature of what's happening on your ride. Sometimes you may have crested a hill just before you get to your limit, or you're going for the calm and you're not going to get there, or what have you, and you stop short of the full breakthrough. You get back and your numbers have come down. So I know there's it's really disappointing for a lot of users. Everyone's disappointed when they get a near breakthrough because you're saying your FTP came down by 5 watts or something. So that could be disappointing. It's really important to understand what's happening here because it's analyzing the one ride and it's telling you how you performed on that one ride and whether you have more in you. So it helps use it as these kind of learning experiences, helps you understand how to perform at your limit. So you have a recognition of what that's like. These are really, really important. And sometimes, you just, it's harder for you to get there. It's hard for you to get past that limit. And so by getting these near breakthroughs, you get an appreciation for that. For the most part, it's not something I would be too concerned about. You know, Look at these as opportunities for you to go back and get a real breakthrough. Okay, so you got this near breakthrough, fine. Next ride, right after that, you go out, smash another hill, ensure you get that full breakthrough. Okay, so now you get a really good understanding of what it's going to take to demonstrate that your fitness is actually improving. So use it as a learning experience. So to answer that question, I wouldn't be too worried about, losing some fitness on a given ride. Use it as an opportunity to kind of go back and get a full breakthrough and learn about what it takes to perform at your best.
Can I get a breakthrough using only heart rate data? Sorry, no can do. Breakthroughs rely on power data to see when you've surpassed your MPA. Activities with only heart rate are still valuable. We can estimate the XSS from them and contribute them towards your training load, but they won't update your fitness signature in the way that a breakthrough does. So, to recap, breakthroughs require power data.
Okay, this user asks, how often should I be getting breakthroughs? Well, breakthroughs normally just happen as you're riding. You don't really have to go out and try to get a breakthrough. You just need to just sort of ride, do a hard ride, do a hard group ride, do a race, do a Zwift race or something like that. Generally, they just happen naturally. So you don't really have to go out and get breakthroughs. And a lot of people will get breakthroughs once every couple of weeks, for example. If you haven't had a breakthrough in a long time and you're on a stale signature and, you're about to start a program, for example, then I would suggest, you should probably set up your training plan with a recent breakthrough. So that would be one situation where I think you'd probably want to go out and get a breakthrough. So if you're about to, let's say, start a goal program and you want to raise your 20-minute power by 5 watts, if you hadn't had a breakthrough in a few months, you might find your next breakthrough you'll get that easily. So the other time, if you're going to be, let's say, doing a lot of workouts, we want to make sure that your signature is kind of accurate. So you might want to get a breakthrough just to make sure that, your training is going to be, effective. You're not going to be under training with a kind of an old stale signature. Really, I think that maybe the last time would be if you're doing a race. Let's say you're planning a race and the race is really important to you and you're going to be using some of our MPA data fields and things like that on your devices, your Garmin and your Hammerhead, then yeah, it'd be good to have a good, recent breakthrough so that your signature is accurate. So you know that your MPA is going to be accurate, and then you're going to be able to rely on those during the race. So those, I would think, would be the three situations where you'd want to have a breakthrough.
Why are some breakthrough circles in my progression chart bigger than others? Yeah, great catch. I always appreciate users that notice these fine details that we've put into the platform. The sizes of the breakthrough circles aren't random at all, and in fact, they're based on the maximal effort time, which is how much time you spent very close to your limit during an activity, or essentially near your MPA. Think of it as how deep into the pain cave you went. A very short, sharp effort that generates a breakthrough, sometimes I'll call these a cheeky breakthrough, will result in a very small circle. Now, on the other hand, if you go out for a long drawn effort with your MPA pulled down, or you're doing a high intensity workout or a race that pushes you right up to your MPA lap after lap, effort after effort, you're going to be rewarded with a very large breakthrough circle. Now, generally speaking, the larger the circle is, the more confident we can be that your signature is accurate. While a few short seconds at your max is helpful, extending that effort for several minutes gives Xert far more insight into how you fatigue, how you recover, and that's essentially what your fitness signature captures. So to recap, dig deep, push hard, and the chart's going to show it. Bigger circles correspond with bigger, deeper efforts and generally result in a better fitness signature.
What does it mean to flag an activity? Let me explain what flagging is. So you'll notice that there's little flag icons beside the activities on your dashboard. You'll see them when you open up the activity. Beside the name, you can go and click on the flag. The flag operation basically tells the system that it should ignore the breakthrough that you had on that ride. Okay, don't count that breakthrough. So when would you want to do this operation? Well, you do it when, let's say you get back from a ride and the breakthrough doesn't make any sense to you. Like maybe your numbers gone way up or maybe your numbers have gone way down. Um, and that can happen for a variety of reasons. It could be just, you've changed power meters, you had glitches in your power meter, it could even be the system maybe just misdetected what you did. And so gave you numbers that just to you don't make a lot of sense. Again, remember that the system isn't necessarily detecting what's happening to your fitness, it's detecting what's happening on that given ride. All right. So on that ride, your numbers have gone up or your numbers have gone down and it doesn't make any sense to you. So that's the opportunity when you'd want to flag them so that the system doesn't count these as part of your fitness. Okay, it'll not include them in any kind of analysis of your fitness and kind of where you are today. So it's important to be able to do in order to keep your current fitness signature up to date with what you can actually perform, make sure your workouts are good and everything else. The thing to note though is that if you flag an activity in the past, so let's say you go back and you examining your data and you say, oh, okay, back in March, I had this breakthrough and it makes no sense because my numbers went up, they went down, and not really reasonable what had happened on that date. So if you go and flag an activity in the past, Xert will take that change and apply it to all the activities after that. So that's a really important thing to remember. If you go back and flag an activity that's a year ago, Xert's going to take that change and apply it to all your activities moving forward. And that may actually materially impact what your fitness is today or what your signature is today. So you may notice that if you flag an activity from long ago, you'll come back and your numbers have gone up or down by a few watts. That's normal. That's just because that's how the change has been propagated all the way through all your data. So that can happen. So just make a note of that. If you flagged something in the past, you might see an effect on your fitness signature from today. So to answer that question, yeah, flagging means do not count the breakthrough as part of your progression and apply that change to all your activities moving forward.
I went all out. Why didn't I get a breakthrough? Is my MPA wrong? This is an excellent question, and I think if you've ever had this where you really pushed yourself to the limit and either looking at the MPA data in real time or perhaps after the ride, it just doesn't seem to correspond with how deep you were in that effort. And first of all, it's possible that your fitness signature is skewed if you have some bad data that resulted in a breakthrough, but more often than not, there's other confounding factors that aren't directly visible in the MPA data. The first of these is fatigue. So if you've been training consistently day in and day out and week in and week out, or perhaps you have some life stress or work stress, or maybe you're just not sleeping well. All of these can result in you feeling like you're pushing your limit when the power simply isn't there. Another option is durability. Even athletes with really high fitness signatures will experience some erosion of that fitness over longer rides. So if you try and push a Strava segment or a climb later into an activity, you won't hit the same numbers that you would earlier in the ride. Now, fortunately, Xert allows you to quantify your durability, and what often looks like you were quite a ways from your MPA before accounting for durability results in a max effort where you do reach your MPA even several hours into a ride. Another option is your nutrition and hydration status. So if you're not properly fueled and hydrated for the effort, then your body's just not going to be able to push the same power that you could if you were adequately fueled. And like I mentioned at the beginning, it is possible that your fitness signature is skewed if there's some bad breakthroughs. So again, review your recent breakthroughs. If anything looks too good to be true, it might be. And of course, you can always reach out to our support team. We'd be happy to help you review the data, make sure that everything is good. So to recap, not getting a breakthrough on a hard effort doesn't necessarily mean that your MPA is wrong. There's a number of confounding factors that aren't directly visible in the MPA data itself.
Okay, I just got my best 5 minute power this season and I didn't get a breakthrough. Why? Well, this really is an interesting question. I think for those that are more familiar with, power curves and mean maximal power efforts and things like that, this, might be an important question to understand. So when you go out and you look at your data and it comes back and says, "Oh, you just got your best 5 minute power." And a lot of systems now they're tracking all this and they're showing you, "Oh, best 5 minute power of the season," and yay, you're it's a new PR, let's just say. And that's it's certainly interesting and valuable to kind of see these, but just because the system detected a best 5 minute power, that's not necessarily that you've got your best. That was your best effort. That was your best that you could ever do for 5 minutes. And the reason why it may not be the best ever that you could do for 5 minutes is because it may have just been random power data. Let's say you're just kind of riding and it detected that over the course of these 5 minutes, you had your best power. Now, it may have been, you may have been coasting in the middle of it. Maybe you were, going hard, going easy. Maybe you just finished a hard effort. So it may not be properly paced. It may not be done in the kind of where you're starting from fresh. And so, yeah, maybe in the grand scheme of things, this was the best 5 minute effort you've done, but it may not represent the best 5 minute effort you could do. That's what Xert is tracking, right? What's the best 5 minute effort you could do? Your signature tells you that. All right. So if you happen to do a little bit less than that, that may not be a breakthrough. So oftentimes your best efforts don't always correspond to breakthrough. Now, a lot of times they do. So don't get me wrong. You could do a 5 minute effort, it's your best 5 minute effort. Those often will show up as breakthroughs, but they don't necessarily have to. Okay, sometimes the effort isn't properly paced or it's been done and it just happens to be your best effort, but we think, the signature says you could do better. So you won't get a breakthrough in that particular case. So to answer that question, I wouldn't be too worried about, your best 5 minute efforts and, whether they are breakthroughs or not. You know, that's just the kind of the old school way of tracking how well you can do. Exert's really it's the signature is going to dictate what their maximal effort is, and that's really what is going to be compared against.
Okay, here's an interesting one. Can Xert really predict when I'm about to crack? Yes, and it's kind of scary how accurate it can be. Some of our users even call it uncanny. Remember that MPA stands for maximum power available, and it represents the most power that you could produce at any moment in time, based on your fitness and how fatigued you are in that moment. Now, when your power goes above your MPA, Xert predicts failure. But if you don't, that's a breakthrough effort. It means that your fitness is greater than what we thought. Want proof? Look at your own breakthrough activities. On the activities dashboard, Xert will show a Google Street View from the very moment that you had your breakthrough. Odds are it perfectly aligns with where your legs said nope and where you cracked. So to recap, Xert expects failure when your power goes above MPA, and if you're able to keep going, that's a breakthrough effort.
Okay, can you explain what a maximal effort is and how that relates to breakthroughs? In order to really understand how strong you are as an athlete or how what your fitness is, what your actual numbers are, you have to go and reach your limit. And the reason for that is that the limit describes and then defines how much power you actually have. So to reach that is you need a fully maximal effort. So sometimes in science they call these a point of failure. We call them maximal efforts. You know, we just call them, reaching your limit. So you can think of this as where you're climbing a hill, you're trying to go up as fast as you can, and at some point you want to keep going. You're wanting to go harder and you can't. Your legs give out. That's a maximal effort. You want to be able to ride at 500 watts, let's just say, and your legs say, I can't do that. And that's natural. Not everyone can hold 500 watts forever. Well, no one, well, maybe some people could. There's a lot of very strong people out there. At some point, everyone's going to go, I can't do 500 watts. Some people that happen sooner than others happen later than others. At that point, really defines what your fitness is for, let's say, 500 watts. That's a maximal effort. At that point, you reach your limit. And it's those moments when you reach your limit is the points where you get breakthroughs. They can happen in a number of different times during your ride. They can happen at really high intensities. So it's not a lot of people think, they got to sprint to get a breakthrough. Yeah, sometimes you sprint, you get a breakthrough. Your breakthrough happens at a really high intensity. Sometimes your breakthrough happens after a really long, hard effort. So you're just sustaining whatever, 300 watts and just holding it and holding it. At some point, you can't hold it anymore. That's when the breakthrough happens, right at that moment. Because if you can hold it for another 10 more seconds, well, you got 10 more seconds of power available. So that means your signature is going to be a little bit different. So it's actually those moments, down to the second, that actually help the system identify what your fitness is. Those are the breakthroughs, and those are the maximal efforts. So to answer that question, you know, maximal efforts and breakthroughs are really, they happen at the same time.
I saw multiple breakthrough alerts during my ride. Why is only one showing afterward? Yeah, this is a great question, and I think really intuitive once I explain what's going on. So when you go above your MPA during an activity, Xert identifies this as a potential breakthrough. Xert then needs to find a new fitness signature to explain this performance since, by definition, your power can't exceed your maximum power available. Once Xert finds or extracts this new fitness signature, it recalculates all of your ride data. So the MPA, your difficulty score, the XSS is all recalculated using your new fitness signature. They were above your old MPA, not your new recalculated MPA. If you want to see the difference, open up one of your breakthrough activities in Xert. Scroll down to the MPA chart and click the previous button beneath it. This will show the old MPA data using your old fitness signature. And a lot of times it'll correspond to what you might have seen in real time if you were monitoring that breakthrough using the data fields or the EBC app. Clicking current will then show you the recalculated data using your new fitness signature. So to recap, a breakthrough means that your signature has been updated and that new signature is used to recalculate all of your ride data.
Okay, this user is asking, what should I be looking for in my data when I get a breakthrough? So generally when I will get a breakthrough, I will go to my activity, open up the activity details, and I like to kind of zoom in on the chart where that breakthrough happened. So let's say it was during a particular part of a race or a ride where, I may have gone for 10 minutes, let's say, and you can see your MPA draw down over the course of that effort. So I like to kind of zoom in on that entire effort just to sort of get an understanding, just get a feel and just try to remember what it felt like. Oftentimes, it's good to kind of go back to the data and then think about kind of where you were at that time and how it felt. Sometimes you know because you have this on your Garmin or you have it on your Hammerhead and you're looking at your MPA data. But if you don't have, let's say you're on Oahu or you don't have those fields installed, then you may not be at the time aware that you're in the middle of a potential breakthrough. So it's good to kind of go back. You can open up that activity on Xert and go back and kind of look at it and see, kind of trying to recall how things felt. I like to do that. I like to know where at the moment I got my breakthrough. Was it because of a harder effort? I was trying to bridge. I was getting dropped. I was sprinting for, ahead of everyone and went off on a break or what have you. So I can sort of look at what precipitated that actual breakthrough. Kind of curious on that. So to answer that question, I would typically just open the activity details page and kind of zoom in on that section where I got the breakthrough and just try to get an understanding of what caused the breakthrough.
That wraps up all of our questions about breakthroughs. I hope you enjoyed the video and that you learned a thing or two. If you have more questions, drop them in the comments. We're always looking for great questions to feature in future videos. If you found the video interesting or helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more Xert tips, deep dives, and Q&A videos like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.